So Steve tells me, Joe, you're the last speaker of the conference. No pressure. And then he shot Banaka at me. Well, thank you, Steve. It is an honor to be with you and to share the stage, especially with Pat and Helen today. So I looked at the program and it said I was supposed to talk about what it looks like to be Catholic in the modern world. Now that kind of forces a bit of a examination of conscience a little bit. Because as I look at my life, I realize that there are sort of three stages. There was a stage where I didn't really look like a Catholic in the modern world. I was pretty weak. And then there was a second stage where I looked okay as a Catholic in the modern world. And I think I'm finally now beginning to really look like one. So let me take you through kind of those three steps. I'm going to start with the weak answer first. If you want to look when I was a pretty weak example, look at my time in college in my early years of my career. I was 18 years old. I left St. Louis to go to Indiana University. And yes, go Hoosiers. And I had two goals because I was a pretty driven guy for my time at IU. I wanted to meet Mrs. Hensler, and I wanted to get a great job. So I'm going to ask your opinion from time to time here. I'll just give you a yes or no question. Can we put up the picture of me in college here? Thank you. So let me ask you, yes or no, did I find Mrs. Hensler in college? There are a few people who apparently can't see the screen well who said yes. The rest of you are right. So I didn't find Mrs. Hensler, but I did get the great job. Let's go ahead and put that one up. Yes, I was the maitre d' at a grocery store. No, I got a job with Procter & Gamble in the laundry detergent business and clearly enjoyed it a lot. So the job thing worked out well. I moved to Cincinnati, started working. A little bit of love for Cincinnati. All right, that's good. All right. And most people would look at me and say, wow, Joe's off to a pretty good start. And I guess in some ways I was. But they probably also say that I wasn't a bad Catholic. I mean, you know, I didn't eat meat on Fridays in Lent, and I went to church some of the time. And I wasn't doing anything wrong with my girlfriend, partially because I didn't have one. Compared to my peers, I kind of felt like, man, I am a saint. I am a total saint. But if I wasn't directly fighting against my faith, I wasn't really embracing it either. And if you notice, something was missing from all these plans. I had no concept that God had a plan for my life. I kind of made it up as I went along, and I hoped that he'd be okay with the choices that I was making, but that was about it. So something had to take me from weak to at least okay. And in my case, what that was finally getting married. Some friends set me up on a blind date with this really awesome woman named Becky, and we hit it off. About 6 months later, we were engaged. And then the following year, if we could put this up, boom. I finally got someone to marry me, which was awesome. I should text her and say everyone applauded for her. That would be great. So here's the cool thing. Not only was she beautiful and intelligent, but she was a much better Christian than I was. But here's the deal. I'm Catholic. She's Protestant. So it took us a while to figure out how we were going to live our lives as a married couple. And as part of that, we had a meeting with a professor at the seminary in Cincinnati, an Irish priest named Father Benedict. And in the course of our conversation, Father Ben asked us a question that has stuck with me to this day. And it's going to change everything that happens in my life beyond that. So we can put this one up. He said, I see you've spent much time thinking about what suits you. How much time have you spent asking where God is calling you to be? So there were some changes in our life right after that. So from a faith standpoint, I finally went all in for the church. I finally said, I'm going to commit to this. I am going to be a good husband. We were about to have a baby. I was going to be a good father. Well, Becky, 6 months after the conversation, she was received into the full communion of the church. I'll tell her that you clapped more for her being Catholic than you did for her marrying me. That's great. So, next up, I mentioned we were having our first child, and so now we had to ask the question, as parents, are we going to do what suits us, or are we going to follow God's plan? And what suited us? 2 kids, because that's what each of us had experienced growing up. That's what we thought we could handle. All right, another time to ask you a question. Here is my family this Christmas. Who had the better plan? Was God's plan better than mine? Yes, absolutely. All right. So things are getting interesting at work now, too, because I'm beginning to talk to people about my faith. And it turns out that there were lots of Catholics, lots of other faithful Christians all over the soapworks. They were everywhere. So over time, we had this nice little group of friends. But sometimes it got a little awkward. So team's going out to lunch. My boss, it's Friday afternoon, my boss said, Joe, what are you guys doing this weekend? I said, well, Becky and I have Bible study tonight. She starts laughing. She's like, no, really, what are you doing this weekend? We have Bible study this weekend. She says, wow, you're already going to Mass on Sunday. Why do you spend any more time doing that? It's an interesting response. And then this isn't my story, but it's so cool, I got to put it in. So a friend of mine and I went to Ash Wednesday Mass, over lunch. We come back in. I had something else to do. My friend gets in the elevator, looks up, and one of our senior executives is already in the elevator with his minion, with his friend. And this senior exec, so like if this is me, think this big, imposing, burly guy. He looks at my friend and says, son, you have some dirt on your forehead. And my friend, thinking fast, says, well, it's because I'm Catholic and it's Ash Wednesday and I'm wearing these ashes as a sign or a reminder that I need to atone for my sins. The executive kind of, elbows his buddy and says, wow, it's a good thing I'm not Catholic. I'd have a lot to atone for. So my friend kind of says, huh. And as he tells it, the doors to the elevator open. It wasn't his floor, but he got off anyway. So I'd say during this time, weird stories aside there, I would say my life was a better example of how to be Catholic. But it still wasn't a real answer. And the reason why was I was being Catholic when it was easy. So my boss kind of makes fun of me for doing Bible study, and I basically just changed the subject. I was happy to talk to people who are already believers, but really reluctant to talk to anyone else. So I needed a challenge. And the good news is God provided it. This one started small. My pastor suggested I might want to take some night classes at the seminary. And I said, why not? This seems like a no big deal. Sounds like it's going to be fun. I'm going to learn a lot. Hey, maybe when I retire from the company, I could go get a job in the church or be a deacon or something. So I start taking classes, and then I begin to feel a very strong, very clear call from the Lord. Hey, Joe, that job you've been working for, and you got this great job leading training, this is something you've been working for years. I want you to leave it, and I want you to serve the church now. Never heard that clear of a call from the Lord before. So I had to decide, how am I going to respond now that he's asked me to do something hard? And I responded by fighting it as hard as I could. I had 3 surefire reasons why I shouldn't do this. I said, Lord, this is my dream job. This is the greatest possible use of my talents. And then I said, Lord, I'm a husband and father. I have to provide for these kids, and this is really well paying. So that would be irresponsible for me to do this. And then I said, Lord, I already mentioned that I might want to do this when I retire, so let's just do this on my timing. Question, my friends, do you think any of those excuses actually worked with the Lord? Yes or no? No, they did not. Because basically what I was saying was, Lord, thanks for telling me your plan, but I'll stick to mine. And actually, even worse, I don't trust that you're going to take care of me if I follow this plan. So, of course, that was kind of a losing argument with the divine Father who created me. So, after a lot of prayer and with tremendous support from Becky especially, I quit P&G, I went full-time to the seminary, and by the grace of God, joined Focus and moved to Denver. So that's my story. Being here has been an absolute blessing. My family loves being in Colorado. God's given us new mission fields. So there is some love for Colorado. I see how this works. You know, we're in a great mission field. We have new neighbors, new friends who we can evangelize. I mean, working for Focus, I can't believe I get to do this. I work down the hall from Curtis Martin. I work with all of the missionary staff here. It's incredible. I love doing it. But more than anything else, I'm at peace. You know, there's certainly challenges in what we've done and where my family is, but we are resting with the Lord and following his plan. So I didn't say I'm a great story of being a Catholic in the modern world yet, because I still have a lot of growth to go. I know I'm not a saint yet, but I'm getting there. So I want to leave you with 3 thoughts, things that I hope you learn from my story. The first one, let's put this up. Don't try to limit God's choices. Now, Steve actually mentioned this the other night. I was really happy he kind of set the table for this. We tend to play a game with God, and I certainly have played that game with him. Rather than being truly open to God's will, what we do is we put a list of our desires together, kind of the things that suit us, to quote Father Benedict, my friend, and then ask him to pick from them. That's not all that different from what Becky and I do with our kids. So we'll get the kids together in the minivan, and it's time to go out to dinner. The last question we want to ask them is, where do you want to go? Because we're going to get 5 insane answers from them. You know, do I really want Doritos Locos Tacos every night? No. Do I want to drive to Cincinnati for some restaurant that doesn't exist in Denver? No, but they're going to suggest those. So we figured out, actually Becky figured out, because she's way better at this than I am. You pick 2 things you can live with and you offer them up. Hey kids, do you want barbecue or pizza? But here's something I thought about. If that is a method of communication that is appropriate for children age 12 and under, that's probably not appropriate when we're discerning the future of our lives with the eternal God and creator of the universe. All right. So, but we do this all the time, and we're doing it because we're afraid that God's going to ask us to do something we don't want to do. So when I think about it myself, or when I work with a student or a staff member, they come to me and they say, hey, you know, I don't know, what do you think? Should I work in Focus for another year, or should I go to grad school? First question I ask is, let's not start there. Start with, where is God calling you to be? And it might be one of those 2 choices, or it might be a third thing that you never thought about. So don't limit God's choices. Second, the call that God has in mind for you may not be what you expected. And that can work a couple different ways. So you could be like me, expecting to be called to be a Catholic, a Christian in the secular world. And then you're going to find out that God's calling you to something different, something within the church in some way. And I hope my story has told you that that's a call you can respond to and be confident about. It can work the other way too. Some of you I know in this room are feeling a strong attraction, a strong desire to serve the church directly, maybe in the priesthood or in religious life, maybe as a layperson serving the church, maybe as a Focus missionary, maybe. Good. But then after discernment, you may find that that's not where God's calling you to be. He's calling you instead to be in one of the secular walks of life, the business world, academia, government. Certainly Pat and Helen are great examples of that, and at one point I guess I used to be too. If that is your call, it's okay to embrace it. That doesn't make you a second-class Catholic. I had someone tell me when I was leaving P&G, oh, I wish I had your faith. I said, that has nothing to do with it. Because when you think about it, where is the greater mission field? What part of a society most needs to be evangelized right now? You know, it's funny to think about that executive at P&G who laughed at my friend's ashes, but isn't it sad that he knows that he has much to atone for, but no one is telling him about the Savior who loves him and wants to forgive him? And the other thing is, when we're in the secular world, there's a lot less ground support. Can you imagine Curtis Martin laughing at me if I told him that we were going to Bible study this weekend? That isn't going to happen in the church. But our brothers and sisters who are serving in the secular world, happens all the time. My final one, trust in God's plan. If you take nothing away from my story today, I hope you leave with a greater sense of trust in where God wants you to be. Partially that's because of my own story, but don't take my word for it. I want you to take the Lord's word for it. Prophet Jeremiah, God spoke to him, to the people of Israel, at their darkest hour, when they were being led out of the promised land into exile. The temple's destroyed, Jerusalem's destroyed. And God speaks this message to Jeremiah. He says, "For I know well the plans I have in mind for you, plans for your welfare, not for woe, plans to give you a future full of hope." Now, my friends, I'm going to leave you with a question. And there are only two possible answers. I don't want you to shout it out this time, because this is something that is going to have to happen in your own heart. But Jesus Christ has a plan for each and every one of you. And it's a great plan, one that's for your benefit and to build up his kingdom. My question for you, will you follow his plan wherever it may lead you? I pray that you have the wisdom to hear his plan and the courage to answer yes. Thank you, and God bless you.